Chapter 9 Lies Not in Our Stars.
Oh my gosh, we've been training for 2 months!
Pedestal and Carlita watched as I ran around the campsite, shouting and frothing at the mouth. Okay, not really frothing, but I was still panicking. I had been gone 2 months already. I should have been at least in the league by now, not wandering around lost in Eterna Forest. All of the wild Pokemon, save the occasional Ditzy Baniri or Badoo, were actively avoiding us at this point, since we had figured out that Dez had an advantage against both grass and bug types early on. We won against all of the wild Pokemon we came up against now. Which was good, considering Pedestal was level 16 and Carlita was level 20. We were over-leveled for the area, I knew that, and I would gladly move on. Except for that problem. The problem of us being lost. In the past week, however, I was quite proud of the progress we'd made. Pedestal had been distrustful of Carlita at first, but that passed when she saved him when we'd gone through Route 205. There seemed to be Buizel everywhere. I was glad we hadn't tackled it before getting a grass teammate. Now, the two were civil and tolerant of each other, though they still slept on opposite sides of me when not in their Pokeballs. In addition to the betterment, I hoped, of our team, we made it as far as Eterna Forest. Until we got lost, that is. True, it was great training for Dez, since he had stayed in his Pokeball for nearly all of the last route, but he was already several levels above any of the wild Pokemon and had the advantage. It was hardly fair to stay there when we were strong enough to move on. We're moving. Come on, guys. Carlita huffed and delicately twirled on one foot to face away from me, scowl firmly in place. Okay, guy and girl. Carlita was a lot easier to read than Pedestal was. She was almost always scowling, though, which made her expressions difficult. She did, however, smile when she danced, which was often, thank the stars. She wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, figure of speech, of course, considering she didn't have hands, and while she didn't necessarily act girly, she was quick to remind me that she was, in fact, female. We started marching in a random direction, or rather, I marched, while Carlita hopped all around and Pedestal plodded along slowly behind us. This scene was a far cry from what I had imagined when I first became a trainer. Several hours later, I managed to figure out that we had made no progress at all, except getting hungry and tired and dirty. Which I was used to, being a trainer and all, but I was also used to going places. All of the routes so far had been pretty cut and dried. You left at point A, traveled a bit, and arrived at point B. This forest had a point A and no point B. Then it promptly ate the point A, so there was absolutely nowhere to go. Can't you two, I don't know, find the way using your innate Pokemon senses? The Numel and Shroomish looked at me, then at each other, and then back at me. Carlita cracked up and Dez snorted out a small plume of smoke. I was experienced enough to tell that even he was laughing at me. I sighed and sat down on the nearest rock, not wanting to add more grass stains than I had to my outfit. You guys are terrible. I hope you both realize that. I'm your poor, defenseless, lost trainer, and you laugh at me. Maybe I should trade you both away. I'm sure I could get a decent bargain since you're both so strong for beating up baby Pokemon. No.
True!
Carlita squealed, shaking her head, body, whichever, vehemently. Dez paused, then decided he was content with letting her do the protesting and merely nodded his agreement. Then don't be so cruel to your trainer. I thought Pokemon were supposed to be loving and loyal, I asked archly. Both came over and started the process of forgiveness. This involved Pedestal rubbing his head against my leg and making smoke rings, and Carlita usually had to hop on my head and dance there. Fine, you two. Let's just get out of here, okay? Maybe we can catch a flying Pokemon and they can find out where we are. You there! Surprised, I sat up, only to trip over Dez and land in the grass below. I heard Carlita screaming at whoever it was and looked up to find another human being. A trainer, probably, but the most important part was that she could help me find my way out of here. Oh good, you got off of the rock. The female trainer placed a hand to her forehead, sighing in relief. Rock? I was just sitting on it. I looked over at it to make sure it wasn't some sort of rock Pokemon. It wasn't, it was just a regular rock, covered in a bit of moss surrounded by grass. That's the Moss Rock! She cried shrilly. Okay. It was mossy. I hadn't never heard of it, however, so if it was a shrine or something, I was probably toast. Maybe the Pokemon gods would take pity on me and only smite me a little bit. You have no idea what the Moss Rock is, do you? the female trainer asked flatly. I could only shake my head. Well, call off your shroomish and I'll show you. I realized that Carlita was chewing on the pant leg of the girl and hastily shouted, Carlita, get off of her! That's not how you treat other people! Carlita reluctantly let go, hopping back over to sit protectively in front of me. How long have you been a trainer? The girl asked, giving Carlita space as she circled around us. 2 months, I replied miserably. Did you start from around here? Not really. Then I suppose I could forgive you for not knowing about the moss rock, she replied, kneeling down beside it as she reached it. The strange girl wrapped her arms around it, setting her cheek on the rock, closing her eyes. Okay, thanks. I started to gather up my things, picking up Carlita to prevent her from chewing on the other trainer again. I didn't know if crazy was contagious, but I didn't want to risk it. Battle me. Excuse me? Battle me, she repeated, opening her eyes. There was an icy glint in them and a mischievous smile on her face. I need to level up my Eevee here so he can evolve. Evolve? Why here? Why me? That's the power of the Moss Rock. If an Eevee levels up in its area, it will evolve into a Leafeon. There's also another rock up north that changes one into a Glaceon. The girl jumped to her feet, reaching down to her belt for a Pokeball. I'm not going to lose to let you evolve. Fine. Just like that, the other trainer gave up and instead looked around. Where are all the wild Pokemon? Anything will do at this point. Alexander is really close to going up a level, and I'm pretty sure even wild Pokemon will give him the experience needed. Alexander? My Eevee. Sure you don't want to battle him? She asked, narrowing her eyes. I'm sure. If she was that confident, I didn't want to try. She had probably been training for ages longer than I had. I started to skitter away, uncomfortable until she got distracted by a wild Badoo. She released her Eevee, and instantly I was interested again. The furry little Pokemon was white. I had never seen a white one before, since usually Eevee were brown, and brown Eevee were rare enough. Hey, your Eevee, he's not brown. Of course not. Alexander is shiny. So is his sister. Cost Daddy a bundle to get them, but they were worth it. The girl replied with a proud smile as Alexander looked over his shoulder at me. Then he bounded forward and bit at the Badoo fiercely and repeatedly until it fainted. He blinked his large eyes and sat down. Nothing else happened. Huh? But we're close to the rock and— Alexander! The girl squealed in delight as the Eevee started to glow a brighter white than he already was. It grew just a few inches, but otherwise slimmed down. When the glowing stopped, instead of a furry, tiny white Eevee, there was a tan Pokemon with brilliant green accents on its ears and tail. It also seemed to have leaves growing out of it, much to Carlita's amazement. The girl happily skipped off with her new Leafeon, Carlita drooling as they left. She seemed to have quite the thing for Alexander, especially after he evolved. I ignored this for the most part, since I was too busy wondering if it was too late to trade her in for a Leafeon.